Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello, and welcome to the Castle of Horror interview segment, where we talk to writers and creators of today's genre worlds. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, creator of the Alex Van Helsing novels. This week we're talking to Chris Barton, author of the book Attack Boss Cheat Code, A Gamer's Alphabet. I don't know, did I say that title properly? Attack Boss Cheat Code. I'm trying to sell the exclamation points that are inside the title.
Yes, an exclamation point after each of the attack, the boss, and the cheat code, not after alphabets. We try to tone it down a little bit after when we say alphabet. So you did a great job.
The bring down at the end of this excitation at the beginning. Okay, Chris Barton, that voice that you hear, that beautiful Texas voice, is the acclaimed author of Shark vs. Train, which was a New York Times bestseller from Little Brown, False Identities from Dial, and The Dayglow Brothers from Charles Bridge, both of which received 3-starred reviews and made 3 major publishing Best of the Year lists, plus receiving many additional notices. As we mentioned, Shark vs. Train was a New York Times bestseller. Dayglow Brothers received a Cybert honor. And Chris lives in Austin, Texas. You can find him on the web at chrisbarton.info. Is that URL still correct? chrisbarton.info?
Yes.
All right.
I don't know who has chrisbarton.com, but it's not me, so you'll want to go to .info to find me.
We can take him. I'm sure that we could find that guy.
Hey, he had first mover advantage, so I should have thought of this 20 years ago.
I've actually held on to my URL literally for nearly 20 years. That's the astonishing thing. I think I got jasonhenderson.com sometime around like 1996. I remember looking for a job, so we're coming up on 20 years, weirdly enough, of that URL.
Well done.
Strange. No, it was crazy. I had a URL when nobody knew exactly what to do with it. Okay, so Chris, this book is called Attack Boss Cheat Code, A Gamer's Alphabet. Can you tell me a little bit about how, because first we want to talk about the new book that's out. How did this book come about? I mean, and I got to tell you, to describe it for the listener, it is a hardback book. It is slick, of the kind, like you'll find in a lot of like picture books and so forth. And what it is you go through it, and every letter of the alphabet has about a paragraph of information about games. Like, so, for instance, W is for walkthrough. If you need a little guidance to help you get better at a game, walkthroughs can be your friends, yada, yada, and so on. S is for sandbox, explaining things like Minecraft for sandbox games. So how did this happen? How did this book happen?
This project came about because my kids were talking about things that I did not understand. I probably started working on this book, maybe about 3.5 years ago, and I've not been working on it constantly all that time. But that's kind of where the idea originated. And they were talking about, I knew they were talking about video games or computer games or console games, but the terms that they were using, things like mod, things like sandbox, terms that I was not familiar with from when I was playing games when I was their age. So I knew that things had changed a lot. Now I didn't want to be left out of the conversation. Now I guess I could have just started playing games with them, or
right.
I could take my approach, which is to research the bejesus out of something and understand it that way. So that's where the idea for this book came from.
I think one of my favorites in the book is the entry called J is for joystick. It says, a crude device used by ancient civilizations, by your dad, your mom, even your grandparents, to move game avatars around before modern controllers came along. That's beautiful and makes me feel terrible about my distant youth.
That's really the appropriate response. And I love the art that Joey Spiatto did for the whole book. But J is for joystick is one of my favorites, and I think that page exemplifies what I was really trying to go for with this book. Is a book that kids could enjoy, whether they themselves consider themselves experts on games, or whether they kind of feel behind the pack and want to catch up a little bit, or something that parents could enjoy if they're trying to introduce their kids to games, or if they're in the same position I was in, where they themselves don't want to be left out. They want to be able to relate to their kids on this playing field that's important to their kids.
Do you find much time for gaming yourself?
I don't, but the same could be said for TV, movies. I've got, counting a tech box cheat code, I've got like six picture books coming out in the next year and a half, and so my head's kind of swimming from one day to the next with an edit here or a promotion there. So I don't play a lot of video games. The one that gets played the most in my house, we've got a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old who are around a lot, and Jenny and I, the kids, like playing. All four of us really enjoy playing Beatles Rock Band, which is not exactly a new game, but it's the right game for us. We enjoy that a lot.
What again? Sorry?
Beatles Rock Band.
Beatles Rock Band, like literally
Yeah.
like the Beatles, like John Paul, George, and Ringo.
Yes. So where the hardware, gosh, here I am, but the input devices, not the joystick, are a guitar, a bass, drums, and a microphone.
How many people can play it at a given time?
Four.
Four, so, I presume. Fabulous.
I guess you could have multiple people crowded around the microphone, but yeah, you get you can play various songs from the Beatles catalog, and you get points. You can do it easy, medium, hard, and you get points for hitting the notes, and you lose points for missing the notes. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. But for me, the game that I myself, by myself, have played most recently is a really fantastic first-person game called Gone Home. Which came out, I believe it came out in 2013, in which you're a young woman, a college student who comes back to the States from a year abroad to the house where your family has moved in your absence, and something is not right. No one is around, and something is not right, or various things are not right, and so you're trying to kind of unravel this mystery of what has happened to your family at the time you're away. And it's a very moving game. In fact, for a while, a few weeks ago, I was trying to remember, gosh, what was that young adult novel I read that got me all choked up at the end? And then I remembered, it was Gone Home. It wasn't a book at all. It was the end of this video game. So I highly... game.
There was one like that a couple of years ago where you're a scientist, like in The Last Man on Earth. You're a scientist who's trying to stop a plague, and this was just a very basic flash game on the computer. And you really had like only one chance. There's some move you can take somewhere or another to stop the plague from killing everybody on the earth. But my God, was this game really depressing. It really made you feel just the relentless onslaught of a plague. It was very sad. But one thing that I wonder about, there's several things I want to ask you, because all of this is very exciting. Sure. I'd love to know how a book like this comes about, but I was also thinking about the fact that you said it yourself, you don't have time for games, you barely have time for TV, and I wonder, surely that's the case with everybody. I mean, if you're like a serious gamer, if you're one of your kids who plays games, they probably actually spend, hours doing that. Right. Whereas when we were growing up, I'm assuming, you and I. Full disclosure, you and I have met many times. but when we were growing up, the only way that you could waste vast amounts of your week would be staring at the TV. And I wonder if this is a better way for kids to be wasting hours of their time than watching TV was.
That's possible. I don't know if you can even compare the two, just because there are so many variables that are different now from then. The number of channels, the platforms. The platform was a TV. Yeah. You might have three such platforms in your house, but they more or less stayed put.
Well, and when you think about it, like a show like, I don't know, Breaking Bad or whatever. Breaking Bad is infinitely better than spending time watching WKRP in Cincinnati. I can guarantee you.
Man, I don't know. I love some Herb Tarlick and I love some Les Nessman. But
you're right. I don't know why
I get your
show.
I get your point.
Well, the funny thing is, by the way, WKRP is new on DVD this week. That's completely far afield to where I think that was why it was in my head. I could pick something far, far worse. Small Wonder, for instance. Anything. There's any number of just crappy things we could have watched in the 70s.
I watched a lot of Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah.
Does that count? I watched a lot of BJ and the Bear and Sheriff Lobo.
That's I got to stretch to find a usefulness and something that contributes to your education in the Dukes of Hazzard. Although, except for that weird season where they were replaced by Coy and Vance, which I think teaches us something about identity. But
I really applaud how easily you could just drop in Coy and Vance Duke. I mean, I could as well, but I knew there was something I liked about you.
All right. How does this happen, though, Chris? You said you have like six books coming up. I mean, you wake up one day, you go, it'd be fun to do a vocabulary book about games, because I think that would connect with people. So how does it happen? Do you send something to your agent and say, hey, I can do something like this? Do you go straight to a publisher? What's your method for getting a book created?
Well, I do have an agent, so pretty much all roads start with her. And I should stress that most of my books are picture books. Now, Can I See Your ID? My third book, I called it a young adult nonfiction thriller. So it's outside the picture book realm, but.
And
all the other books,
more than one story, or just
yeah. Can I See Your ID? It's 10 profiles of people who pretended to be someone but they weren't. So going back nearly 200 years is when the first story took place, and most of these are people who were in their 20s or even in their teens when they pulled off these false identities. They did it for various reasons. They did it. Some of it did it to save their lives. Some of them did it kind of as a lark. Some of them were, sociopaths. At least one of them in particular, I think, had some real psychological issues. But I wanted to do that book because I thought you could probably learn a lot about, what went into, pulling off a fake identity, and what would lead someone to do it, and what it felt like to be in the midst of that by studying these 10 different people who had undertaken that at different times and places. And I wrote the whole thing in second person, so I kind of tried to take it a step further by putting the reader in the shoes of this person.
The whole thing is in second person.
Whole thing.
So I start a chapter and it says, you jump over I'm just guessing. You're literally using the word you. You jump over a fence and move into the yard and look around. Wow.
Right. So one of the profiles is of a woman named Sarah Rosetta Wakeman, who was, of all the women, and there were hundreds of women during the Civil War who masqueraded as men in order to fight for either the Union or the Confederacy. She's the only one for whom there are surviving letters. And so I wrote about her, and I put the reader in her shoes. So I talked about, and I set the scene one day when she and her division, I believe, were getting ready to march. They've been stationed in Washington, D.C., and they were getting ready to march out, and they're going to get on a ship and travel south to Louisiana to actually start fighting. So I set the scene that day. It was an uncommonly cold day in Washington, and I kind of knew what was around her as she did that. So yeah, I say to the reader, you're. In hopefully a little less ham-handed way than this. No, you are Sarah Rosetta Wakeman. You are a woman pretending to be a man. You are going to go fight in the Civil War. But that's the general feel of it, because I wanted to kind of get the readers.
It strikes me as being extremely rare to write a book in that person. In second person, you just don't see that very much. I mean, that's
although Neil Patrick Harris's new autobiography is a choose your own autobiography, and so it's written in second person. So you get to enjoy the experience of being Neil Patrick Harris. So this is kind of like a 10 versions of Choose Your Own Adventure, except you don't get to choose. What happened. I just put you in that person's position.
That's a really good point. Did you read those things when you were a kid?
Oh yeah, I read those. I was of the age when I was right in the target market when those things first started coming out. So I developed those.
Okay, so you were telling us how a story comes around. You come up with an idea, you contact your agent.
Yeah, so picture books are different. So it may depend on whether it's a nonfiction picture book, I've written a lot of biographies. And so I'll, if I find myself continuing to think about someone, I can't quit thinking about them. And I am sort of able to frame their story in a way that makes sense for the 7 to 10 or 8 to 12-year-old market. That kind of, it tells me that this is someone I want to write about. And so usually in the case of, if it's a biography, I'll tell my agent, hey, this is what I want to do. And she'll say, go for it. And I'll research it and write a draft and revise that draft and send that to her when it's ready. For the silly stuff that I write, the Shark versus Train type books, and I've got some more in that sort of vein coming out over the next couple of years. It's similar, I do much research when you're just making stuff up. But I'll send things to her, and either she'll say, yes, this is great, I know exactly which editors to send this to, or I think you need to, I think you can do better than what you've done. So she'll send it back, and I'll do some revising. So I've got a great reader in her, and someone who knows kind of how to push me to do better. But I also have a lot of friends who are writers, and I'm married to a writer, and so I've got lots of opportunities to get feedback on things that I write before I voice them off on my agent or on any editors. And so that's a great way of helping me put out my best work. And then the agent will once she deems something ready to go, she'll send it to editors, and I still get a lot of rejections.
I was going to ask you, these are major publishers you're dealing with, so you're definitely way in the upper echelon of writers as far as dealing with publishers. I mean, do you ever stop and think? I was going to ask. You were mentioning rejection, and I'm sure that definitely happens to everybody. But this is Hatchet. These are and who's the publisher of the current one? If it's FSC. These are major publishers that you're dealing with for these books. I mean, do you ever stop and think, I can't believe that I'm doing this? That this is the career that I have.
Oh, I feel very fortunate to be doing what I'm doing, and it's a great line of work to be in, and a great community to be a part of, and you just kind of want to keep earning your place in that community by continuing to do the work. So I get up at 5 a.m. most days, and it's not dragging myself out of bed. I'm enthusiastic about the work that I've got to do. So I'll get out of bed at 5 and start working on whatever most needs my attention that day, because I love to work and I want to be able to keep making it. So, but yeah, there's sort of a sense of, wow, I'm getting paid to do what I'm really, really good at, and I feel extremely fortunate to be in that position.
And you mentioned that you're married to a writer. You're married to I know this because you and I have met at several writers' events. You're married to the lovely Jennifer Ziegler, who wrote it's Revenge of the Bridesmaids, isn't it?
Revenge of the Flower Girls. So there has been Bridesmaids.
I'm so embarrassed. See, that's
you're far from the first person to think, to look at Revenge of the Flower Girls and think Bridesmaids, because Revenge of the Flower Girls came out just this past year.
My daughters were both Flower Girls this past summer, and they read Revenge of the Flower Girls just voraciously. I mean, they literally fought to finish the book because they kept trading it back and forth, and they loved that. But one of the funny things is that among I don't know how to put this, among the youth market of books, children's books, young adult books, all that stuff, there's this community that I never encountered when I was dealing in the world of adult books.
Right.
You see one another all the time. I mean, you see one another at events. You do school visits. Do you do the school visit thing?
I do school visits. I do book festivals and school visits, and I love getting in front of the audience. And you're right. There is this community that I had no idea existed until I just kind of stumbled into it. And I think
it's so strange. I mean, for the listener, you run into, if you get into this community, you wind up, you'll go to like a book festival, like in one of the many educational regions. Because in Texas, for instance, the schools are divided up into regions that cover various cities and their suburbs and so forth. So, you're in the region that covers San Antonio. And so you're down there and, oh my gosh, hey, there's Chris Barton and he's going to be doing a panel on this. And oh my gosh, there's Jennifer and there's all of these people and, and they're conversing with librarians, they're conversing with English teachers. And, if you were today a writer who was setting out to write novels, like just regular everyday airport fiction, for instance,
right.
You had a really great thriller about terrorists taking over, a giant building or something. That might be really cool. You could even have a bestseller. But this community that we're talking about is not as available in my experience. For some reason, there's something special about children's fiction, and that club is pretty neat. I'm sure that you've experienced that.
Yeah, and I experience it every day, and I kind of stumbled into this closing in on 14 years ago, and it was here in Austin, and even then there was what I thought was a really strong community. There's an organization, an international organization called the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, and Austin, even at the time, had a really strong chapter. And it's just gotten stronger and stronger since then because, those who have gotten published and attained a certain level of success tend to stay, to the extent that they can, involved in the organization and kind of help bring along the next generation of folks who are working their way up. So I think having that sense of support and that sense of camaraderie has been essential. It's allowed the Austin community to keep growing, and I tell people from out of town, it's a wonder any of us get any work done because there's so many opportunities just to hang out with other authors.
Just to hang out, yeah, no, that's true. Yeah. And Austin's a great place to be a writer. I mean, there are lots of, for one thing, there's all these coffee shops to hang out at, and I know, Mozart's. If Mozart's Coffee House is still there, which it was last I checked,
I believe it's still there.
And yeah, I mean, it's endless coffee. It's literally bottomless coffee that you can drink until 2:00 in the morning, and just set up there and work. Okay, well, but listen, before we wrap up, I want to ask you: is there anything at all that you would advise, say, a young writer comes across this podcast, they're listening to Chris Barton talk, and they say, Mr. Barton, I want to write. I don't know what would compel somebody to want to write, but I presume it's, I want books to be out there with my voice and my name and so forth. Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, the two pieces of advice I would offer is, one, always have some way of capturing your ideas. For me, it's the lowest tech way possible is I have a little notepad in my back pocket and a pen in my front pocket. And so anytime I've got an idea, even if it's just like one word, like balloon, write down balloon, and hopefully you'll remember what you meant by that, because what the idea was that prompted you to jot that down when you had a moment. You don't have to act on the ideas right away, but you want to have some way of capturing those ideas. And sometimes you'll find yourself, scribbling pages and pages in there, and sometimes it's just one word. But you got to have some way to capture those ideas when they come to you. And the other thing is to find your writing community. Writing has always been, long before I got into children's writing, writing has always been kind of a community activity for me. In elementary school, my friends and I were, we would make comic strips together. We would write little plays or skits together. One of my best friends in junior high, we spent much of our 7th and 8th grade years writing long, like months-long parodies of soap operas or superhero sagas, and the same was true for my closest friendship in high school was based around the student newspaper. So having a community has always been really important to my writing. So I would urge you, anyone who wants to be a writer, to find that community, find people, even if it's just one person who is a champion of your work and encourages you to work and kind of pushes you to you want to, if you can have someone that you want to impress, and someone who wants to impress you, and you can encourage each other, that's that's all you need is one other person. That can be your community. But I think you'll find that you kind of attract other people and other like-minded people. But it's not. It certainly does not need to be a lonely existence as a writer. And I think that's kind of a misperception that it is a lonely existence. And for me, it's always been there's always been a community that goes with the writing.
Did you? I know that was supposed to be my last question, but I'm just curious. I mean, did you write for fun with friends? Like I remember in college, you know, I would say to my close friends were all people who like to write. So our way of having fun was, hey, let's go out to, you know, whatever, someplace where we could set up our computers, like, you know, like the student union or whatever. You know,
right.
Let's go out and let's set up our computers across from one another and let's get some writing done, you know, and have some coffee or have some whatever to drink. You know, is writing something you do as an entertainment?
I don't know that it was so much entertainment. It's ever been so much pure entertainment, you know, since really since I was in junior high. In high school, you know, there was a student paper. In college, also the UT University of Texas student newspaper, the Daily Texan. That's the whole reason I came to UT. And
you wrote the Daily Texan?
I did, and that's my best friends from college are guys that, for the most part, guys and people that I knew through the Texan. So we would write to impress each other, and we would write to amuse each other, but the vast majority of that was for publication. But my favorite classes in college were classes where there were lots of essays written and lots of sharing of those essays and critiquing of those essays. And so it was all, you know, it was part of a job or part of a class, but it didn't make it any less fun or less meaningful. And so I think I would still do some sort of writing with other people, even if I hadn't stumbled into writing and getting published. It's just that much a part of what I enjoy about other people.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's a lot more that I would love to ask you, because I know that we could go on for. I want to know about how writers are supposed to promote themselves and all of that, all the craziness of being a writer today. But we should definitely wrap it up there, because I know we're going long. Chris Barton, New York Times best-selling author of the new book, Attack Boss, Cheat Code, A Gamer's Alphabet. I really appreciate you spending time with me. I'm deeply thankful, and I know that people will learn a lot and be inspired by your words. I hope to get to talk to you again very soon. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you, Jason. I really appreciate it.
All right, talk to you soon.
Right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.